Hi, this is Kyle from Pure Storage, and welcome to a demo of VMFS Management with the VMware vSphere web client plugin for Pure Storage. To get started in this first section, we'll show you how to create a VMFS data store, how to resize one that you've already created, and then lastly, how to add that VMFS data store to another cluster or host. So to begin, we'll just to level set here, we obviously have the Pure Storage web client plugin installed, and we've got a few arrays attached to it as a prerequisite. With that, we'll find our ESXi cluster of interest. We'll right-click on that, go down to Pure Storage menu, and click on Create Data Store. Select VMFS type, and then VMFS 6 as the version. We always recommend that. We'll give the data store a name, and we'll say 10 terabytes. Then we'll select our compute resource. In this instance, it's a cluster of 3 ESXi hosts. We have Pure 1 enabled here, so that's why you see that recommended label. We also have an active cluster pod available too. But in this instance, we'll just deploy this VMFS data store to a single array. We will then decide which protection group or groups to assign this VMFS data store to. You don't have to do that. And then, of course, we have volume groups and quality of service. So QoS, you can set limitations. We usually don't see people adding volumes, VMFS volumes to volume groups. With that, you see that summary screen that just popped up. And here our data store has now been created. We started off with 10 terabytes, but let's say we wanted to expand that to 15. We made a mistake. We need a little more space. So to do that, you simply go down to the size field here. Note that you can move this data store into an active cluster pod as well in this Edit Data Store window. So we'll go from 10 to 15. And now by clicking Submit, we'll see that our capacity of this data store will automatically be increased to 15 terabytes, which we can see up here in the right-hand corner. With that, we'll switch to a different cluster quickly and show you how to mount an existing VMFS data store to an additional cluster. So here we have plugin demo 2. Right now, as we'll see, it's only assigned to a single cluster. So what we want to do is mount it on additional hosts. So in this instance, we've got this other cluster. It's only attached to one right now, one host in that cluster. And to add this array to that other cluster, we simply select the host or hosts that we want and then click Mount. Now when we go down to this other cluster where we just added this array to, we can see that plugin demo 2 is indeed available for us. So in the second section, we'll talk a little bit about VMFS snapshot management on the Pure Storage flash array. To get to that, you can do a couple things here. You can either create a snapshot on demand by right-clicking and going to Create Snapshot in the Pure Storage menu, which we've done here. And once that snapshot's created, by highlighting that data store and going into the Configure menu, we can see that here's our snapshot that we just created. If we actually go over to the Pure Storage GUI, we can see that for that plugin demo volume, our array-based snapshot also exists here as well. When we go back over to the vSphere plugin, we'll also notice that there is a way to create a snapshot within the snapshot context menu too. So we created test 1, now we'll create test 2. Test 2 has now been created, so we have 2 snapshots available. But if we want to remove it, let's say we don't need it after all, highlight it and then simply go to Destroy Snapshot. You have the optional selection here to eradicate that snapshot. What eradicate means is that that snapshot will not be available to be recovered for 24 hours. We didn't select it in this example. So if we look at the Pure Storage GUI again, we can see there is our destroyed snapshot, which we can either recover or choose to eradicate here as well. We have a couple other options available for us within the snapshot menu. So if we highlight our snapshot of interest, we can restore it on top of itself. Super useful if you have a VM or group of VMs that are hit with a ransomware attack and you want to roll everything back into a certain point in time. It's important to note that all VMs do need to be powered off. But once everything's powered off, it's really just that easy as you saw. Our other option, which is very useful for test dev instances, is to create a copy of this snapshot to a new data store. So we'll call this plugin copy demo. We select a compute resource. Since this is going to be a new VMFS volume, we can optionally add it to protection groups and assign QoS to it. But then once we select those options and complete it, we can see here we have our plugin demo copy volume available. Moving right along, we'll go to destroying a VMFS data store. So that plugin copy demo from the previous section that we created, we'll now destroy it. Right click, go down to the Pure Storage menu and select Destroy Data Store. Again, make sure all VMs are vMotioned, powered off, or otherwise not on this data store, because an active mount will cause this workflow to fail. Here we can see that VMFS volume is being unmounted from the hosts. Hosts are being rescanned, and now that data store is now gone. But again, of course, that volume is available to be restored on the flash array for 24 hours after deletion, which we can see here under destroyed volumes. One of the really powerful things about our vSphere Web Client plugin is the ability to get a lot more granular detail on your flash array VMFS volumes. So on the summary screen for our data store, we can see a wealth of information. What array is it on? What's the volume name? Have I set any QoS limits? What data reduction am I seeing? Is it a member of an active cluster pod? A bunch of different things. Additionally, if you click on capacity, you'll see a little bit more detail. And we've got much more detailed explanations of this in our VMware platform guide, which this video points to and is a part of. Also, in terms of viewing VMFS data store information, we can look at the performance charts, right? So we have IOPS, latency, and bandwidth available, and we can zoom in anywhere from 1 hour to up to 1 year, and simply dragging and left-clicking and dragging over this will give you the ability to zoom in interactively on these different metrics shown here. Here's an elastic, well, not least is bandwidth. This is just a demo volume, so of course there's not very much going on here, but still a little bit of bandwidth to show here. With that, we'll move on to adding and removing a VMFS data store from a protection group. Protection groups are set up on the flash array, but the vSphere Web Client plugin can take full advantage of those. So when we created this originally, it was a member of one protection group. Now I'm going to add it to a different one that is replicated off the array every 4 hours. So I've added it there. If we go over to the Pure Storage GUI, which is where the protection group can be set up, and we go to that VCD protection group, we see our plugin demo volume is a member of that protection group. Now, if we go back to the Pure Storage menu and update data store protection again, we can unselect these protection groups to unassign that volume from that protection group. And going back over to the Pure Storage flash array, we again see that that plugin demo is no longer a member of this protection group. So now to end this out, we'll talk about running UNMAP and scheduling UNMAP. UNMAP is space reclamation on your VMFS data store. Very important to run this on occasion. Run space reclamation will run it on demand. You simply select which ESXi host you want to run UNMAP against for that VMFS volume, and it will run immediately. We also have the ability to schedule running UNMAP against a VMFS volume on some sort of schedule, which is probably the right way to do it. You can select one host to do this. So let's say we want to run it every 2 weeks. We want to run it Saturday at off hours, we'll say 2 a.m. So simply fill in those fields and then select schedule. If there's a change to the schedule that we need to make, we simply go back to Pure Storage, schedule space reclamation. We can make changes to the schedule, change the host, change what time we want it to run at. And let's say it's doesn't have as much churn as we expected. So we'll change it to Sunday, and instead of running every 2 weeks, we'll run it every 3 weeks, and we can update the schedule. Finally, you can delete an UNMAP schedule as well if you wanted to start over, and click there to delete that schedule. That concludes this demo of VMFS management on using the Pure Storage VMware vSphere Web Client plugin. Please check out our platform guide for step-by-step instructions, and thanks a lot for watching.